Here we go again. Tell me in the comments why you think the most well-known feminists and SJWs are easily the lowest hanging fruit. It is noteworthy that Anita's feminist frequency video, which does not allow rating or comments, has a mere 38,000 views as of the recording of this video, whereas Thunderfoot's response is clocking in at over 175,000 clicks as of the making of this video, and almost 3,000 comments. In her video description, Anita boldly states, "In manufacturing a Muslim menace, we analyze the ways in which the ubiquitous, deeply harmful, stereotypical representations of Muslims and Arabs as terrorists and savages and so much popular media contribute directly to the Islamophobia in our culture. More than that, they cultivate a political space in which our president can ride Islamophobic sentiment straight into the Oval Office and then pursue policies rooted in the very Islamophobia that Hollywood has done so much to cultivate." It's amazing. I really didn't, just a personal note, that Trump was in cahoots with Hollywood. I hadn't known that until I read this. Anyway, back to the video.
Western media is full of images of evil brown people who need to be wiped from the earth by noble, righteous white men heroically fighting for freedom and justice.
Is this what passes for serious research these days? Since I won't include much of what she shows, you might need to watch her videos for reference. Anita plays clips from popular films like Indiana Jones, but fails to show what would be a near endless set of clips of evil non-brown people that go back over a century. She fails to discuss serious racism in film, but that would mean she would have to do some actual work. I do realize that her emphasis is on popular culture, so it is unnecessary to state the culture she reports on is as superficial as her reporting. But I digress. Let us get back to this claim of old-fashioned Islamophobia in our media.
And sure, it's so commonplace by this point that maybe you don't even bat an eye at old-fashioned American Islamophobia in our media.
I love me some old-fashioned Islamophobia in our media. Please, Anita, educate me on this topic.
समझते हो वीरान This is a hijack. Give the change. Have you ever considered joining a harem?
What? Back to the Future?
Let's look at some of the movies Anita has chosen for this old-fashioned Islamophobia in our media. Unlike Anita, I am not going to cherry-pick several second clips to attempt to justify my argument. Raiders of the Lost Ark is an action-adventure film. Since parts of the film take place in Egypt, you might expect some of these brown people to show up. Now, if they didn't, the SJWs will be crying about non-inclusiveness and cultural appropriation. Ironically, in this film, the most evil of all evil are white German people, and the Nazis are portrayed as bad guys, as well they should be. Iron Man is another action-adventure film with some sci-fi to boot. Once again, we see the hero of the film in places busting at the seams with these brown people. One has to expect that these terrible brown people portrayed in this film would out of necessity need to be evil and bad. One is unlikely to find the enemy of white patriarchal colonialist imperialism in the caves of Iraq to be filled with French and German ethnicities. So who is going to be the bad guys, Anita? The guys from Kansas? The same sentiment for a few of the other films. I would love to include more examples of why her claim is so silly, but I would suggest that Anita watch movies made in parts of the world by brown people. Let's look first to the movie Gwimba, the Tyrant, by amazing director from Mali, Sheikh Omar Sissoko. Don't know if I pronounced that right. In your little clip from Raiders of the Lost Ark, a white dude shoots a brown man. In The Tyrant, we see a brown man shooting another brown man. I've watched the film and don't remember seeing any white Western shitlords in it, so the brown people are the good, the bad, and the ugly. Why do they do this? Because it takes place in Mali, and all the people are from Mali. I can selectively edit out any scene from this or any other movie to attempt to make any point. So you see this bad man shooting a helpless bystander. No, it isn't. I edited the part out that is a few seconds before the shot where Gwimba is firing back at the man who took a shot at him. Although Gwimba is the bad brown man in this film, made by a brown director, the scene shows self-defense. My point is obvious. When you take a few seconds out of context, you are left with a biased view. Anita can pick random scenes to attempt to bolster her point. However, it is very simple, as just shown, to edit and make any point you want from a few seconds of clips. Samir A. Khoury, a brown director from the Middle East, oddly portrays brown people as evil and violent in one of his cinematic masterpieces, The Lady of the Black Moons. I don't need to go on because, like Anita, I can show endless clips from movies to prove my point. And the point is this: books, movies, and stories from all over the world can contain heroes and villains. Bit of a obvious 101 there, isn't it? There was a time in the United States, perfectly presented in D.W. Griffith's silent epic, The Birth of a Nation, when brown people were unfairly portrayed in popular media. There is no denying this. And simply showing images of successful black actors and producers does not prove that things have changed. But the feminist frequency empress has no clothes. Things have changed. Did you know that we no longer are allowed to harm animals in the production of a film? You could selectively edit parts of a movie where an animal appears to be hurt. But alas, rational adults do not live in this world of make-believe where we can invent conclusions to suit our own selfish interests. Sometimes a story only makes sense if the person portrayed is a white person or a brown person or maybe a blue alien. What if all the movies about American soldiers fighting in Vietnam showed only Swedish people as the enemy? Wouldn't make much sense now, would it?
Unfortunately, we can't hop in Doc Brown's DeLorean and undo all the harmful representations of Muslims, Arabs, and Middle Easterners that have haunted our stories since, well, basically since the Crusades.
You have to drag in the Crusades? There must now be a version of Godwin's Law for the Crusades. I bet if we go back in time for thousands of years, Anita can find countless examples of brown people that have haunted our stories.
Once upon a time, non-white actors could hardly get any work in Hollywood at all.
This is true, but things have changed and you are being insincere if you claim otherwise. Let us refer to this first chart. And at first glance appears to be so unfair to non-whites until you see the actual breakdown by population reflects pretty accurately the racial demographics of the film industry.
These days, shows like Homeland and movies like Executive Decision are providing some brown actors with ample opportunity to portray scary terrorists who get gunned down while screaming something absurd like "Death to America."
Fancy that. You mean something like the dozens of terrorist killings in recent years where the brown person murders civilians and shouts Allahu Akbar?
If you think this kind of racist coding to signify the difference between good Arabs and bad Arabs went away with the advent of talkies, think again. Have you ever noticed how in Disney's Aladdin, the good guy might as well be a tanned American surfer dude, but the bad guys look and sound a little more, Arab?
Just before this Aladdin clip, Anita bemoans the fact that Rudolph Valentino plays an Arab, but is allowed to be a hero only because he is Italian. You can't win. Arab, a hero? No, he's not. He's Italian. But here is where she goes off the rails. Since you've decided that out of two Arab dudes, One looks like a surfer bra. That doesn't mean anything. You see, the bad guy should look like the bad guy. Did you want the animators to make him look Italian? Rudolph Valentino looked Italian and you twisted that one up into a logical pretzel. I have to think that Anita's video must be embarrassing to her fans since it barely clings to reality if it does so at all. I tell a lie, her fans must be eating this up.
It's so common that on screen, brown skin has practically become synonymous with bad guys who have little or no character development beyond hating America and freedom fries.
If Anita cherry picks a movie that depicts a Middle Eastern terrorist as a bad guy, I find it difficult to defend the use of a Middle Eastern person portraying a Middle Eastern person. You see, Anita, there are countless films about white people killing and murdering because the character depicted is a white person killing, etc. She doesn't grasp the decisions to portray a character with someone who is believable in that role. If the character is a Middle Eastern terrorist, I guess we can get an Italian to play him, like good old Rudy Valentino, and that's fine as long as he can do the job. But we're still not in the clear with Anita because we portrayed a Middle Eastern terrorist in a bad light. So what is the answer, Anita? Scripts should go before some special board or tribunal that says, even if this is a true story about true events, you are not allowed to portray a brown person in a bad light? Is this what you want? Is this what's going to happen? So it will become effectively impossible to make a movie about, say, September 11th, since we'd just be picking on the brown people, wouldn't we?
But despite the fact that Islam is a religion, not a race, it's vital for us to understand that Islamophobia is racism.
Okay, she lost me there. After listing all the countless ways to show that Muslims cannot be put into any one category, Islam, after all, is a religion that anyone can believe in, she tells us that Islamophobia is racism.
If you've been paying attention this far, you might be asking yourself, if Islam isn't a race, then how can Islamophobia be racism?
Sadly, I have been paying attention so far.
Again, Muslims come from many different races and span a myriad of cultural identities.
So, tell me again how the criticism of a belief is racist?
In fact, the former president of the Islamic Society of North America is a white woman, Dr. Ingrid Mattson.
And tell me why that matters to anyone. Didn't you say that Muslims come in all shapes and colors? Besides, it is always the SJWs that are bringing race and identity politics into everything. I couldn't give a rat's ass what color or sex or whatever this person is. If they represent a shitty religion, then I'm going to say something about it.
But let's be real, nobody who spreads the hate of Islam is talking about white ladies.
What the hell is she talking about? The people that are spreading the hate about Islam have nothing to do with rational critique of Islam. See that? The SJWs aren't the only ones that can use the nothing to do with catch-all phrase. But seriously, there are people that hate other people based on the accident of birth or sex or what they believe or don't believe. This is nothing new. The social justice warriors are so far out on a limb with their talking points that they are no longer able to distinguish between the people with good intention and those that want a mature and honest dialogue. Remember, it is you, Anita, that said this.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Orientalist paintings of the 1800s were often characterized by overly sexualized depictions of daily life, and Romantic Orientalist literature of the late 1700s and early 1800s served to justify European imperialism by presenting Middle Eastern people and cultures as inherently exotic and strange.
It looks like Anita doesn't understand art. Could it be that every artist that toiled before an easel was somehow complicit in some vast conspiracy to undermine the Ottoman Empire? I guess it's possible when you shoehorn your conclusions conveniently into history.
Now, I can already hear the army of Richard Dawkins parroting anti-feminist Twitter users typing up their responses about how Islam is a religion dedicated to oppressing women.
She must be a psychic because Anita and her people can invent all kinds of patriarchy and a long list of phobias that we in the West seem to suffer greatly from. But one thing is certain, Islam is not a religion of peace. I've dedicated several videos on this topic, and we don't have to have a great imagination to know what rights people don't have in Islamic societies.
It's amazing how suddenly everyone's a feminist when it lets them perpetuate hate against brown people or dismiss concerns about how women are oppressed in their own culture.
Everyone is not a feminist when it comes to human rights. See, now you're just being absurd here, Anita. The way you make it sound, all of a sudden in the year 2017, people start to notice that people have inalienable rights. Is that what you're saying? Feminism played a part in righting the wrongs in Western society, but under Sharia law, women are mere property of their men and do not enjoy many rights or privileges. This last statement Anita makes is aimed at throwing off the guilt of being a feminist and claiming to be concerned about women's rights, but conveniently are looking the other way when millions of women all over the world are not privileged to do what Anita is doing right now. And this last remark from Anita that I'll play here next is an indictment on Anita's supposed feminism.
So let's be clear. Misogyny is not a problem with Islam. Misogyny is a problem that some cultures, which happen to be Muslim, use the religion to perpetuate and justify.
While this logic can be valid in some cases, here she is saying that Islam is not the problem, but using the basic tenets of Islam faithfully is the problem. I am finished here. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend a few minutes with Disturbing Trends. Goodbye.